2 Samuel 11, this is David and Bathsheba. Everybody loves this story. Everybody loves this story. And, you know, the first, and we're going to do 11 and 12, not tonight, but we'll end in 12 next week. But the question you always want to ask is, why is this in the Bible? You know, we've just had all this high point now. David is at the apex of his leadership. It just doesn't get any better. Do you know if you go to Israel today, conservative Jewish thought still loves King David. They still see King David paradigmatically as the king. And it's because it was the golden age of Israel. It literally was. And nothing has matched it since. He was a brilliant leader, a brilliant military general. The nation was unified. They were at peace. They had won all their battles. There were skirmishes here and there, but essentially they were like the Roman Empire. They ruled the world. And everybody came to them, and they were known. And it even expanded under David's son Solomon. Solomon was known for his wisdom. People came from all over the world to consult with Solomon. And then it all blew up. And the Bible always wants to show you why it blew up. The fact of the matter is, the reason that you know the Bible is true is because, and not mythology, is because mythology always sugarcoats its heroes. You know, the heroes never fail. But the Bible, every single hero of the Bible is concerned to show you the depth of their sin and how broken they really are. And the reason for that is the big picture of redemption. That the only possibility for salvation is never going to be within humanity. Someone has to come from outside to rescue us. And that is Christ, God in the flesh. And so even at the apex of David's rule, when he has everything, he is rich beyond measure. He has power that you wouldn't even be able to imagine. He has more power than certainly anybody has today. He could do anything he wanted, anytime he wanted to do it. And you're going to see that, because that was his exact downfall. So the Bible does not sugarcoat its heroes. And you shouldn't either. We worship Christ, not David, right? The phrase isn't dare to be a David. The phrase is dare to love and follow Jesus Christ. It's always the way it works. All right, so we're going to look at this passage. We're going to read it, and then I have a few lessons as always. So chapter 11 of 2 Samuel, in the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle. So this is an interesting reference, but remember, and we've pointed this out before, but you know, military warfare was not conducted like it is now by some guy sitting in Colorado with a drone and doing drone strikes over the Middle East on a computer. You went out in the spring because everybody went. You took all of your supplies and your equipment, and people tented, and you know, everybody lined up on one side with one army and the other side with the other, and they faced each other, and I mean, it was a big production. And so it was like springtime, it's time to go to battle. And everybody's going, and it literally was that plan. The time when kings go out to battle. But here's the point. David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. Now, what's the problem there? You're going to see it in a minute, but he didn't go. He sent someone else to do his work. He's supposed to go. But he's getting fat, dumb, and happy now, right? He's rich. You know, why risk it? Why risk it? He's got everything going for him. And they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. That's the line. That's the narrator wants you to know. He did not go out. He is now what we call an armchair general, right? He's not out there screaming with Patton in North Africa, standing on the top of a tank. He is back where it's safe and sound. And it happened in verse 2, late one afternoon, when David arose from his couch. So everybody's out fighting a war. risking their lives. He's putting the young men of Israel at risk. He's back on the couch, hanging out, relaxing, right? When David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, what's happening on the roof of the king's house? This is where you relax. He's not, he's not in a big meeting. The parliament isn't in session. There's nothing like that going on. He's not down with his generals planning the attacks. He's up on his couch, walking along the roof, enjoying, his big, wide open spaces. He was walking on the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And of course, he would have, that's not any kind of criticism of Bathsheba. Just the physical structure. She wasn't intentionally exposing herself to him, nothing like that. It's just that, his palace loomed over everything. He could see everything from where he was. She probably had no idea that he was even there. And here's the problem. David sent and inquired about the woman. All right, just think about this for a minute. He sees a woman bathing. He's hanging out on the couch. He's got a little umbrella drink. Maybe some shrimp cocktail. Everybody's out fighting, not him. The servants are around. It's like that scene that you've seen in movies, guy laying on the couch, has got all the grapes and women half dressed running around and, they're fanning him. Right? He gets up, he sees this beautiful woman, and instead of just letting that go, right? So he sees a beautiful woman. All right, so he sees her in a compromising position. So what? All right, we're done. No, he's not done. He sends someone to inquire. Now let me ask you, if you send someone to inquire, do you think that that's now going to be known around the palace?
Yep.
You betcha. Humanity is still humanity, right? There's no way to hide that. So he sends one of his guys, it'd be like send one of the trustees, hey, Rich. But Rich would say no. This messenger doesn't even say no. It's the king. He can do anything he wants. So he sends the messenger to inquire, and David inquired about the woman. And one said, now here's the information. Now he gets the information. Is not this Bathsheba the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite? He knows. She's married. He knows. So David sent messengers and took her. Now, think about what level of power this is. Now, it's very difficult because we had the women's movement and the Me Too movement. And we have all this, and so we live in a culture where if you look sideways the wrong way, you can lose your job, you can lose your career, you can lose everything. Right? That is not this culture. You have to understand. He had complete control. She would not have been in a position to say no. Now, I think she could have said no, but it would have been very difficult to do it. And it's hard for our culture to understand that women had no rights at all in this day and age. None. Zero. It's very difficult to understand that. But just try to put yourself back in that place and just understand that when the king calls you, you go. And there's not a choice, because in her mind, this could put Uriah, her husband, at risk, her children at risk, everybody at risk. Of course, it does anyway, but she knows this. But he goes and gets her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. You familiar with that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't take long, did it?
Well, I'm sure it's compressing time. I'm sure it took him, an hour or two to command that to happen. Now, she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness. That's just a reference. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, I'm pregnant. So this is, be sure your sins will find you out. This is a message that is not going to feel good to him. So David sent word to Joab. Who's Joab? His commander. All right. Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was doing. Honestly.
Hey, buddy.
Can you imagine this conversation? Just think about this for a minute, right? He's already taken the guy's wife. This is one of his, he's going to be listed as one of his mighty, valiant warriors later on in the scriptures. Just in this long list, Uriah the Hittite is listed as one of the valiant warriors for David. So this guy is like a rainmaker. He's a military animal, you know. And hey, how's Joab doing? He just covers it up like, hey, there's nothing going on here. This is all good. He's going to have the pretense of, you know, I'm just trying to see how things are going with you. I mean, this is a deception that is just, it's a cruel deception, isn't it? It's really horrible. Now, you think about it. If he's out in battle, how long did it take him to get back? You know, this isn't where, you know, we're going to fly him in on the F-16 and you know, so he can come to General Patton. I mean, you know, this takes some time. So this is developing now, and so this is registering in David's heart over a long period of time. So when Uriah came to him, David asked, hey, how's Joab doing? How are the people were doing? And how's the war going? You know, how's it all with you? Right? And Uriah thinks that this is a do you think that David is genuinely interested? He's not interested. But he makes Uriah think that he's interested. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. So David gives him a gift. And he tells him to go down to his wife. Now, why does he want him to do that? Exactly. That can't be his kid if Uriah had been home for the weekend, right?
Right.
So he's thinking, you know, I can get out of this. I'll bring Uriah home and I'll look like I'm treating him well. He's one of my valiant warriors. I'll give him a gift, like a little break from the war. Hey, go visit your wife, enjoy yourself, have some fun. You know, and this, he's got it all planned out. Got it all planned out. And Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. Do you know why? You'd have to go back into Leviticus and the Old Testament law. But when a man was at war, he was not to sleep with his wife. And of course, there's a bunch of reasons for that. But you know, wants to keep them being a fighting man, and so he wasn't supposed to sleep with his wife. Uriah knows this and refuses the favor because he is an honorable man of war. He's not going to do it. So he won't even take the gift. He will not go home. And think about that for a minute. The guy's been out in battle, right? And his wife is down the street, not going.
Doesn't David must realize this also. He's a warrior.
He knows the rule, but he thinks, he breaks rules all the time. Why won't someone else break the rule? You know, for the sake of the camera, you know, Rich's question is a good one. It's like David knows that a warrior is not to break this code, and David offers Uriah the opportunity to break the code. Uriah doesn't break it, but David is the kind of guy who's a code breaker. You know, he's broken the code 100 times to get Uriah home. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. And when they told David, hey, Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? You know, I mean, he's like, come on. And Uriah said to David, now listen to this answer. Now, is a Hittite an Israeli? Is a Hittite a member of the covenant? A Hittite's a Gentile. Now I want you to hear the answer of the Gentile. The Gentile says, the ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? That is a godly answer. Of course, David has already been to the house to sleep and eat and drink and lie with his wife, but Uriah is not going to do it. As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. So here's a man who is willing for the principles of Scripture to say no to King David. No, I'm not doing it. Now, Uriah is a tough cookie. I mean, he's a tough cookie. Then David said to Uriah, remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back. So, okay, fair enough. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next, and David invited him, and listen to this, and he ate in his presence and drank so that he made him drunk. So now he gets Uriah home, and you got to speculate a little bit. I know what I'll do. I'll get him drunk, and then he'll go down to the house. You know, he won't be such a man of principle if he's, you know, half in the bag. So David is still massaging this thing for all he's worth, right? So how is your honorable King David looking now to you? Now, I mean, it's hard to like him at this point, isn't it? He's like, you know, what in the world? You know, this is the man after God's own heart. And you know, we're going to understand the principles of this, but the principle is always the same. It doesn't matter who you are as a human being. We're all broken. And without the grace of Jesus Christ, there's no salvation. Period. This is all of us. You know, it's easy to say, oh, I wouldn't do that. Yes, we would. We'd all do it. We've probably all done it. It's probably too late. We already all done something like, and if we didn't do this, we've done something similar, right? That's the whole point. That's why it's in the Bible. So he gets him drunk, and in the evening he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his Lord, but he still didn't go down to the house. He's not that drunk. He's not going. He's not going. So in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it, and look at this, by the hand of Uriah. Oh.
I know.
Think about the deception of that, right? You know, this looks so much like The Godfather that it's unbelievable. I mean, the deception is just massive. He's going to send, and this is the letter that tells Joab to have Uriah killed. And he gives it to Uriah, so Uriah delivers his own death sentence.
I'd have been worried he'd read it.
What's that?
I'd have been worried he'd read it.
Oh, I would have too. But it probably had the king's seal on it. They would seal it, put the signet ring on it. So he couldn't have broken it. So Joab, you know, would know. So in the letter he writes this: set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting. You know, don't put him, make sure it's in the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him that he may be struck down and die. So, you know, this is like sending a police officer in. You get 5 police officers, right? And one guy's on point and say, we got your back, you go in first. And then the other 4 say, don't cover him. It's, you know, it's murder. It's simply murder. And as Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting. And he instructed the messenger, when you have finished telling all the news about the fighting to the king, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Probably he was killed with arrows from the wall or something like that. Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Why that reference? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you why. Joab is sending a message. And if you've forgotten your book of Judges, which I know you read probably every day, Judges, don't forget, was Judges 9. Abimelech kills his 70 brothers to take over, and he was Gideon's son. And he kills his 70 brothers in order to become a leader. And then the Lord judges him, And as he's in battle in Judges 9, a woman kills him by throwing a millstone from the top of the parapet down onto his head and crushes him. This is Joab saying, you're going to get killed by that woman. Joab knows. Because you can't keep anything quiet. Right? He has sent messengers. You don't think Joab knows what's going on? He knows what's going on, right? So that's a secret little message, and if you know your Bible, you realize Joab knew his Bible too, and he knew that David would know. And that's the message that he sent him. So now, David knows he's been found out. Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebez? Why did you say, go near the wall? Then you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. He's setting him up. Joab is just laying it on. So the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. And the messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. And David said to the messenger, thus shall you say to Joab, do not let this matter displease you, for the sword devours now one and now another. No big deal. No big deal. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. A little pat on the back. He's done a good job. All the secret little messages have been sent, all the little shading of the truths, all the little, political speech where you say one thing but you mean another, all that's been done. The message is sent back to Joab, you've done good, don't worry about it. So Joab says, he's going to get rewarded for this, he will. When the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, isn't that interesting? How the narrator puts that. When the wife of Uriah heard, just zeroing in the point that David has taken another man's wife. When the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she lamented over her husband. And when the mourning was over, now that would have been months and months, probably a year, because mourning was required. And when the mourning was over, David sent again and brought her to his house. That didn't say anything about her volunteering to do anything. But without Uriah the Hittite, she's going to be destitute. She is the Gentile wife of a military warrior.
How long did she wait? He wait to get her?
Months.
Wow.
Months. So he sends for her again and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing, and here's the punchline, but the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. That's the understatement of the century right there. That's bad. All right? So that's the story. Do you remember this story like that? Now we'll get some lessons out of this, all right? First of all, let's talk about sin. Right? Let's talk about the sin problem, because that's the first thing we got going here. Sin doesn't just happen. How did David get into this predicament? And as we're reading this, what types of things should we be looking for? Because we want to guard the sin that comes to our heart too, don't we? First of all. So the first of all, sin comes to him because, first of all, he is neglecting his duty. He is neglecting his duty. He doesn't go out to fight the Ammonites. He stays at home. He is supposed to be out there with him. That is the rule. That is what we read earlier in 1 Samuel, that we, give us a king that he might fight our battles. Remember that? That was how they got Saul. Give us a king that he might fight our battles. The Lord says, okay, I'm going to give you a king and he's going to fight your battles. David, is he out there fighting the battles? He's not out there fighting the battles. He's neglecting his duty. He's at home. He's laying on the couch. He's got umbrella drinks. He's hanging around. He's getting fanned. You know, all the things that pictures coming in his head. He's walking around the roof of the house. Oh, he's probably got his binoculars out. Hey, oh, she looks good. He's doing everything but what he's supposed to be doing. Now, how about you? Forsaking the gathering of yourselves together? Neglecting the reading of the Word? You're going into your closet to pray? These are the Christian disciplines that the Bible teaches us to do. This is the things that we're supposed to be about. And if I had a nickel for every time, someone comes, well, first of all, I stopped going to church. I still identified as a Christian, but I was just too busy for church. And all of a sudden, I'm not doing that. And I'm really not reading my Bible, so I'm not getting any spiritual nourishment to grow me. And my prayer life is just gone. I don't pray about anything. And I'm neglecting all of the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Fellowshipping with believers, loving one another, caring for one another, all the things the Bible teaches us to do. And then we're surprised that an affair pops up in that relationship. Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. Now, reverse engineer this. Right? Reverse engineer it. You want to stay married and not be fooling around all the time? Stay connected to the body of Christ. Stay in church. Read your scriptures together as a couple. Pray together. Do the work of ministry together. Serve in somebody. Find somebody to help. There's always somebody. There's always somebody. Do the things that the Lord teaches you to do. Don't neglect your duty. Because sin is knocking at your door. And this is one way you keep it back. So that's one thing, right? Secondly, the willingness to abuse power. The willingness to abuse power. He could do virtually anything you want, and again, it's hard for us to believe, but we see this. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, and he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful, and David sent and inquired about the woman. There's no stopping that power in this day and age. He can do anything he wants to do. He can do anything he wants to do. And of course, the direct relationship, is people who are in positions of power with people, school teachers and pastors and politicians and, managers of companies and, all these places where people have power. It's very easy to slip from, I have some influence within this narrow field of focus. I'm a manager of this particular office, and now I'm going to also manage your life. I'm going to manage your sexuality. I'm going to manage, I'm going to get a whole bunch of other things. It's always easy to do that, but remember, it's just not reserved for people who have that level of influence in whatever sphere of life they're in. It's any time that you have the ability to influence someone else to get your own way, and that can just be someone you know. And you misuse that power. Instead of serving them and loving them in Christ, you use that power to gain pleasure for yourself. And David was more than willing to take the power that the Lord had given him, power that was to be used to build up the people of God, and take that and use it for his own advantage and for his own appetites. And we have to guard our hearts against that all the time. Listen, this can happen, you understand, within a marriage. Just within a marriage. One person, and it's not all, most often, I'll be honest with you, most often it's the man. But I've seen it when it wasn't. But most often it is, so be careful. But with a man, He has nothing else going on in his life. He might not have influence in the other place, but he has influence in the home, and he misuses that power, and he abuses her sexually. He abuses her in controlling ways, let's just put it that way, and that's about 3 steps away from the children from that point. Because his love, his appetite is control. He wants control, and it probably won't stop at the wife. And you have to be, I'm just telling you, this stuff is dangerous, and that's where sin is coming in all the time. It's just, it happens all the time. And then, of course, this is the one you'd have guessed at any rate, right? But appetites are bigger than God. Your appetite is bigger than God. Think, David just didn't get here one afternoon by mistake. He didn't stumble into it, right? This is a man now who has how many wives? Remember all the way back when he said, okay, oh, man, he just took another wife. And oh, he just took another wife. And now he's got a lot of wives. And clearly, his appetites are out of control. All he has to do is see a pretty woman, and now he exercises his government power, which is the power of the sword, right? He can have everybody killed on his word. He had her husband killed on his word. Just kill him and he gets killed. No pushback whatsoever from Joab. That's the power of the sword. That's the power of all government, and he has it. And when his appetite is bigger than God, then he's going to use that power to satisfy his appetites instead of serving the Lord. Now you say, okay, I'm not a king. Yeah, you have appetites, don't you? What appetite is more important to you than the Lord? And that's called idolatry. When you value something more than you value Christ, that's idolatry. You don't have to carve anything out of a piece of wood. You don't have to, it's just a thought, right? And that's always the danger of the first command. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if you don't, everything else falls apart. Because you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to take his wife, you're not going to be lying, you're not going to break any of the commandments, are you? And so it always is an issue of what do you value most in your life. And when your appetites get above the Word of God, and we live in a culture right now where people think that sexual appetite is their identity. And it is more important than their Creator. And by the way, that's going to disintegrate in ways you can't even imagine. You watch. Just let me ask you this. Has the sexual revolution improved family life? Are you kidding me? I mean, it's virtually disastrous. It's virtually disastrous. We have a whole generation of children who've been abused, who have been sexualized, who have had to go through the pain of family disintegrations. They have nowhere to go. We've raised a whole generation like that, and it all started with one thing: sexual revolution. It's just, this stuff never works out. It just never works out. And David had his own little personal sexual revolution, didn't he? He's like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. My appetites. If you elevate some physical appetite to the all-important thing of your identity, you're an animal. Someone's just got to tell you, you're just an animal at that point. You've reduced yourself to a wolf. We are not our sexual appetites. We have brains created in the image of God. We can control our sexual appetites. But if you think the most important thing in your life is your sexuality, you're in deep trouble. Everything else will disintegrate. It will. You'll be on meds. It won't take long. And that's just what happens with David. He has elevated sexuality above all things. And it's going to destroy him. It's going to destroy him. So that's the causes of David's sin. Now, how did he get there, right? How did he get there? So we want to have the path to sin. Of course, always have 3 things. So those were we had the causes, right? Now we're going to have the path. Because this stuff, you walk along the path. The first thing he does is he doesn't just look, he gazes. You start looking at something, it's not that first glance that kills you, it's the gaze that kills you. You start looking at something, I'm the same way, I'll be on eBay, and, photography is a pretty big hobby of mine. I have a dark room, I have all this stuff, right? And for a photographer, you cannot have too many cameras. You can't. So I'll be on eBay, I'm just looking. I just want to see what's out there, just checking out the prices and, what's the market like for that particular model camera. And I don't do digital, that's not a camera, that's a computer. These have to be film cameras, no batteries, no nothing, 100% mechanical, everything, all right? So I'm looking, and the more I stare at that thing, and now you can, you open up the app on your phone, and that's all it takes to buy anything. You just bought it, because they got it set up to my PayPal, and it says, Steve, we recognize you on this device. I bet you do. I don't even have to sign in or anything. Just, yeah. And, and then it shows up at the house. I mean, it's amazing. I'm not just glancing at it, I'm gazing at it. And all of a sudden, whatever I gaze at, you got to have it. You ever riding a bicycle, right? You're riding a bicycle and you're looking at someone, and what are you doing next? You're driving right into the stop sign. You're going to go where you gaze. You're going to go where you gaze. Now, when Jesus said what? If thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. Now, obviously, he's not asking you to mutilate yourself, right? It's a metaphor. But the point is, get those things out of your life that are going to lead to a path of sin. And honestly, and I'm saying this on purpose because I know this is going out now around the country, but men of this generation, Christian men of this generation, have more problems with pornography than any other generation. And the reason is accessibility. It's on your phone. And you can just have a simple, innocent Facebook account, right? And it's going to pop up. And all you got to do is click on it once. And it's going to pop up again. And then you click on it a second time, it's going to pop up. I don't know what the algorithm is, but probably 1,000 times at that point, right? And then the next click is to something that you never intended, and now you're gazing at it. Just glancing, you're gazing. And you can't get it out of your mind, and you can't erase it. And Christian men, I mean Christians, I'm not demonizing anybody. Christian men are struggling with this more than any other generation, and our young men, there's almost not a teenager that is not struggling with this. It's become rampant, and it's toxic. It's virtually toxic because it teaches you to objectify women. It uses sexuality in a way that God never designed it to be used. It's just awful. And that's exactly what happens. You gaze at it, you gaze at it, and you gaze at it, and pretty soon you're in bondage to it. You can't stop looking at it. And I can tell you right now, based on all of the years of pastoral counseling, when guys get hooked in this and Satan gets their hook into them with pornography, it's a drug. It's almost impossible to get someone out of that. It becomes that deep. It's a very profound thing because it's so identified with you as a human being. It just gets that deep into you. It's almost worse than alcohol. It's unbelievable. And nothing good, look at all the studies of pornography, nothing good comes out of someone addicted to pornography. Every serial killer has been connected to pornography, virtually addicted. You look at all the crime and sexual abuse of children and all that, pornography's in there all the time, 100% of the time. And this is what David does. This is king porn from 1000 BC. It's king porn from 1000 BC. And you can't look at it. So just stop looking at it. You got to stop it, right? It'd be like if, I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to sit a bottle of scotch on my kitchen table and just stare at it all night long, but I won't drink it. You're going to drink it. There's no way. You're going to drink it, all right? Well, once you gaze at it, the next step is you invite it in. He sent for her. Now, what makes you do that? What makes you do that? So, you're sitting in the bar by yourself and you look down and you're married and you're on a business trip, right? Look down the bar, I don't know, you're at the Hilton, I don't know where you are. You have a good job, you may be at the Ritz-Carlton. Look down the end of the bar and there's someone well-dressed, attractive at the bar, and you're just away for 3 days and you have a drink in your hand and you look. Now you're looking a lot. So far, so good. What's the next step? You buy her a drink. You say to the bartender, hey, send her down a drink for me. You just invited it into your life. You just invited it into your life. And why? It took you a while to make the invitation, didn't you? You had to gaze at it. The next step from gazing is an invitation. You're going to invite it into your life. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's the path. And that's exactly what happens to David. And you remember what Hebrews 13 says? And it's a huge warning. Do not defile the marriage bed. That's a warning against adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Period, 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 period. It always destroys. It always destroys. Always. Never goes well. Not ever. Not one time. And that's what he did. He invited her into his life. He knew she was married. He went and got her anything. He was already married. But so what? I'll have another one. You can't have too many. You can't have too many. So he invites it into his life. And then fine, once you gaze at it and now you invite it, the next thing is you accept it and you make, I'll just put it this way, you make excuses for it. And this acceptance, and this is an excuse, is always 100% of the time a lie. Always a lie. And it's like all lies. Lies are euphemistically renaming something. You know what I mean by euphemistically renaming something? You take something bad and you give it the best name for it. It's like George Orwell's 1984, right? That's the way, you just rename things so they sound good to you. And the first word you use is love. I swear you're going to use the word love. Well, it's just love and the heart wants what the heart wants. I say, man, your heart's in the wrong place, pal. I mean, honestly, that's exactly how it starts. And if you talk to the average person today who is destroying their life with sexuality that's misplaced and misguided, they will actually get enraged at you. Do you know what anger is always a sign of? Idolatry. When you take away something that someone values, if you take away their highest value, you will generate panic and anger like you've never seen in your life. Just remove the highest value of their life and watch what happens. They'll shoot you. I mean, they'll get in a fight with you, right? And sexuality has become the highest value for some of these people. And they're willing to call it anything. It's just natural. It's just love. The heart wants what the heart wants. And then they'll start calling you names. If you argue for a sexuality that's pure and morally balanced and centered in God's will, which is great sex, by the way. It's great sex. And they will begin to charge you with being, bigoted or, whatever it is. This is someone who has, and I'll say this for the sake of the camera, their problem isn't they're so erudite, they have deep mental problems. And you always have a mental problem when you abandon your God, because you become alienated in your mind, darkened in your understanding, and futile in your thinking. All right? So that creates mental tension for you. And that's what happens all the time. And this is what David does now. Now he accepts it. This is a lie. And now he has incorporated the deepest sin into his life. And look how this went. It went from a beautiful woman that he just didn't glance at and say, okay, God made someone beautiful there, but I'm all set at home, and I'm just going to turn my head and go. Nope. Had to look at it. Now he sends someone for her, he gets her, he brings her into his life, he gazes at her, he invites it in, he accepts it, and what's he doing next? He's killing somebody. He's killing someone to keep her. This is what sin does. It always escalates. It always spirals out of control. It never gets good. It never gets good. So we have the causes, we have the path, and we have the consequences.
Did she know he did that?
Yes. We won't get to this, but, well, we will. But the Lord is going to kill that son. He's going to take that baby. She knew. She knew. At first, I'm pretty sure, and again, we don't get, the Bible says nothing, and you have to appreciate this, the Bible does not criticize Bathsheba at all. This is David's problem, right? And in her culture, she was responding, you know, in the way that probably everyone would have to do. But at some point, you become complicit in it. And you don't, you know, Uriah, her husband, was able to say no to David. She didn't. Uriah was willing to say no to his king. He's a warrior. I'm not doing it. And he rebukes David. As if David, you know, how can you even ask me to do this? So she's certainly complicit at that level, and the Lord takes that son, and that young son dies. And that's the judgment of God on them. And so certainly at that point she knows. All right, so now we, the power to commit sin provides the power, does not provide the power to escape its consequences, though, does it? And, you know, I watch this all the time. It's like, well, you know, people say, I just know my sexuality, I just love it. It's like, well, how's that going for you? And it's never great. You know, I look and there's divorces everywhere and broken hearts everywhere, abused children everywhere. It never turns out great. People who feel like, you know, they've just been physically abused and discarded, and, you know, and people who've become callous, you know, just never turns anything I want it to turn into, all right? So first of all, it affects him personally, right? Sin always starts, and there's no way for, I don't care what happens, when you sin against the creator of the universe, you know it. I don't care how much you cover it. You can have all kinds of bravado with your friends. You can do this, that, and the other thing. But the fact of the matter is, there's always personal consequences to your sin. There's either, you know, the rabid feelings of guilt, or the broken relationships, or you know, identity crisis, or I mean, it's an endless list. But there's always a personal crisis, and this is what happens to David. Those powerful words. I'm pregnant. Oh boy. That never goes well. I'm pregnant, right? And so now he's killing people, he's lying, he's full of deception. He is totally broken down as an honorable man at this point. This is a guy you wouldn't want to do business with at this point. You know, if he likes your wife, you're going to be dead too. And if you were supposed to be out fighting the battle and you're Joab and you're supposed to be an honorable general, now you're going to have to be taking these little underhanded orders from the king. Joab had to kill one of his best men because David said so. You think Joab wanted to do that? He did not want to do that. So now the circle gets bigger, doesn't it? I don't care what you say. You never sin by yourself. You never, ever sin by yourself. It's never just you. Well, it's just between me and the Lord. No, it isn't. And if you think that, then you're on a level of a lack of self-awareness that's almost unspeakable. Everything you do affects everybody else. There's just no way around it. So first of all, he has a personal crisis. Then, of course, and that was leading, we have a social crisis now, doesn't he? Because what you do, remember what Jesus said in Luke chapter 12, what you do in secret will be shouted from the rooftops? If you think you can hide your sin, it's just going to be between you and whatever, it's never, ever going to happen. I can't tell you how many families I've watched, right? Where one of the spouses cheats on someone else, and maybe there's a subsequent divorce, and maybe there's not a remarriage, but there's, the new couple's together, and now all the in-laws hate each other. They hate the people, right? Because they actually like that guy, right? I mean, it always breaks down. Look at the friendships that break down. Because people start fooling around this way. It always expands. It never just stays between you and your little sex partner. Never, 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 never. Now we got mom in it, we got dad in it, we got mother-in-law in it, we got cousins in it, we got best friends in it, and now we got half your Facebook friends know too, and they're people you've never met, because people are typing it on Facebook. Why would you put that on Facebook? But they do. They put it on Facebook. Unbelievable to me. It never stays between you and the person. Ever, ever, ever. And it won't in church either, so don't. And then, of course, your real problem is you have a spiritual crisis. Can't spell crisis. Now you have a spiritual crisis, right? And if you think that you can sin against the law of God and not feel that guilt and alienation from God, you're lying to yourself. I always, look around at people who are, right now trumpeting sexuality like no one ever had sex in the history of the universe, in the history of humanity. It's like, oh yeah, tell us something new about sex. I mean, come on. It's a level of silliness, really. But they've elevated it to godlike status, right? Humanity, we've been around a long time. Guess how we got here, Junior? We had sex. It's just amazing to me. But all those people who are like, oh, the church did this, those people don't want to go to church. I'm not keeping them out. I can't get them in. I need them to come back to church. That's the only place they're going to get helpful information. This is the only place where we're going to have to retool human flourishing for them so they'll know how to flourish as one of God's children, created in the image of God. But you can't get them back, can you? Once they go over the cliff, they don't come back. And you're not going to get them back. Because sexuality is such a powerful idol that it will displace all there is about God in it. There'll be no love for His Word, there'll be no love for God, there'll be a rejection of His commands, there'll be a rejection of the Word of God. It will then just become foolish, and pretty soon, they'll start calling Christians names, and the church is the bad guy. No, it was you the bad guy. You did it. You did it. My marriage is fine, 35 years, I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. Everything's good. How are you? Not so good. Well, maybe you want to think about that. But I want them back. Please, I'm begging you, come back. Let me minister to you. Let me show you how to flourish as a human being. And let me show you how to engage in a sexuality that actually will bless you and grow you and make you stronger instead of the sexuality that's actually going to end up killing you. It's a massive problem, all right? So that's what happens. All right. So I just want to talk a little bit for the last 3 minutes about Uriah the Hittite, because that's redemptive history stuff. All right, and I just want to remind you of what that is. Everybody got this? Yes. Causes, path, consequences. We have a sin problem. All right. Let's just talk about Uriah the Hittite just for a second before we go. He's a Gentile. He's a Hittite. He's not a member of the covenant. And what does he do? Well, first of all, I have 3 things that he does. I know. I know. I didn't expect it either. So here we have Uriah the Gentile obeying God's law. That's kind of weird. I thought only Israelites did that. Apparently not. And I remind you, was Abraham a Jew? He was not. He was a Gentile from the Ur of Chaldees. It was always God's plan for every tribe, tongue, and nation. Always, always, always. Israel never understood that they were simply to be a model for the rest of the world to preach to all the nations. Evangelicals are still making that mistake. There's nothing special about dirt in Palestine. Sorry. There just isn't. So Uriah the Hittite obeys God's law. But not only that, Uriah the Hittite protects God's honor. He's not going to go sleep with his wife, but he protects God's honor. The ark, in verse 11, the ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? He won't do it. He's going to protect the honor of the Lord. You know what the ark is, right? That's the place of God's presence in the temple. You've got a Gentile that is acting more godly than David, the king of the covenant. Don't lose that distinction. And then finally, what does he do? He's in solidarity with God's people. He's in solidarity with God's people. He will not leave. You see what he said? He slept with the servants. I'm not doing it. I'm going to stay with them. Now, that's the definition of a Christian, by the way. People say, I'm a Christian. What do you think about the law of God? Well, it's a bunch of foolishness. There's a bunch of stuff. But I'm a Christian. No, you're not. You're not a Christian. I'm sorry. If you do not love the law of God, you're not a Christian. Okay? Let's start with that. You protect God's honor. No, I'm going to do anything I want. I don't care about God. I'll tell God what to do. God won't tell me what to do. You're not a Christian. I'm sorry. I mean, I want you to be one, and I'm going to help you do it, but you're not one now. All right? Solidarity with God's people. I can't stand being around people at church. I don't want anything to do with God's people in the church. I don't do that, but I'm a Christian. No, you're not. Stop lying to yourself. You're not. If you do not care about God's law, if you will not protect the honor of the God who created you, and if you do not want to be around God's people, you're not a Christian. Period. Don't let anybody lie to you about that. But having said that, that is just me saying, please, please come home. Come back to Daddy. There's room at the table for you. I have a place here. There's always going, there'll always be a place at the table for you. But you're not there yet. It's time to come home. And what is this passage doing? It's trying to show you the distinction is not about if you're the king of the covenant or if you're a Gentile. It's about who will honor the Lord, right? And so in this passage, you see immediately that Uriah the Gentile, the Hittite, honors the Lord where David, the king of the covenant, violates the Lord. So you are not a member of the household of faith by genetic structure. You are not a member of the household of faith by your lineage. You're not a member of the household of faith because Daddy was a member of the household of faith. You're a member of the household of faith when you obey God's law, when you protect God's honor, and you are in solidarity with God's people. Period. And that doesn't matter if you're a Hittite or you're the king of Israel himself. Same rules for everybody. By the way, sin is the most democratizing thing in the world. Don't get mad at sin. Sin makes sure that the king and the pauper are the exact same people. They're treated the exact same way. Right? In the mind of God, it doesn't matter if you're a king or you're a Gentile warrior that kills people all day for a living. It's about who honors the Lord. All right? So that's a great lesson. All right. Any questions about that before we go? All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you again for your word. I pray tonight that through your Spirit you'll apply it to our hearts for Christ's sake. Amen.